Captain Schaaf's log, stardate 76306.8. This week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy finds the crew of the USS Protostar coming face to face with the Borg. I won't drone on and on about the plot details, but we're glad you're here today. Resisting this podcast is futile. Welcome to TREKnological, a Star Trek shakedown. We're a short-form podcast hosted by two hardworking dads who love to talk Trek. I'm Captain Schaaf, and with me each week, side by side in our co-captain's chairs on the bridge of the USS TREKnological, is Captain Vactor. How are you, Vactor?
I'm doing very well. Captain Schaaf, how are you?
Woo! I'm doing good. I'm tired, though, man. We're recording this episode a lot earlier than we normally do. It's 8:35 here in the Pacific Northwest, and the episode just went live as of midnight this morning. So we're on the cutting edge of talking about Star Trek Prodigy today. I haven't even had my morning coffee. I'm having my morning Prodigy chat. With my dear friend and co-captain Vactor. So we're super glad you're here today. Each week, we'll be traveling to a new planet to seek out new Trek news, as well as boldly going through our thoughts of each episode of Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, which just kicked back off the second half of its season last week. So we're going to continue on with our weekly discussions that way. But first, Captain Vactor, could you please set a course for the nearest planet, Maximum Warp?
Aye, sir. Course laid in.
Machine gun jumblies, how did I miss those? So, before I go any further, I totally forgot I had to put a catchphrase in. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say. And then, but this is just to show how weird my brain is. That's what came up. That's the first thing I thought of. The first thing I thought of was machine gun jumblies. How did I miss those? So go figure.
I didn't know Schaaf was such an Austin Powers fan.
Oh, I could quote the whole movie. I could quote the whole thing, front to back, start to finish. Go, baby. Very good. Okay. Anyways, Captain Vactor, now that I've gotten that out of the way, could you please meet me in the transporter room where we'll beam down to the planet's surface and search for some Trek news?
Aye, sir. On our way.
Two to beam down. All right. Wow, this planet looks like a very boggy marsh, very swamp-like planet. Very sticky. Watch where you put your hands. Okay, Captain Vactor, let's scan the planet's surface for any sign of Trek news.
I found some Trek news, Captain Schaaf.
All right. Thank you, Captain Vactor, for finding that for us. Please transmit those news articles to our show notes for our listeners. Now then, let's continue our weekly mission with our episode discussion. So we are talking about Season 1, Episode 12 of Star Trek Prodigy. The episode was called Let Sleeping Borg Lie, but I'm super sleepy, so I'm going to call this episode Let Sleeping Schaaf Lie, because it's too early. It's too early, but we do what we got to do because, as we mentioned, we're hardworking dads, we're attentive husbands, and we also work full-time. So recording a podcast has to work around all of those schedules, and obviously we put family first. So that's just how it goes. But anyways, this episode aired today, Thursday, the 3rd of November. It was directed by Olga Ulanova and Sung Shin and written by Deandra Pendleton Thompson. Now, before we get into any spoilers, talking about the episode, or even share the synopsis, let's throw up a quick red alert. And we just want to make sure that you know that now is your chance to press pause on the podcast and come back after you've seen the episode. All right, so The synopsis of the episode is as follows. When the crew encounters a dormant Borg cube, Zero risks everything to save their ship. Okay. So the Borg find their way into this episode, which I was not disappointed about. I happen to love the Borg. They're one of my favorite Star Trek. I don't want to call them villains. They are villains, but like it's not like they have evil notions.
Yeah.
They're just on their civilization is a collective design for one purpose, and that's like to be the absolute best in everything,
right,
and conquer everything. Like, so that's not like, it's not an evil thing. It's just what they do is often in opposition of living for these species. So it's like, okay, well, I guess we got to take them out. So, but I think the Borg cube is pretty cool. It's a very interesting design for a ship.
Oh, yeah.
And the character and like just the species itself is really, really cool because they always look different. You can have like big hulking Borg drones, or you can have, skinny, whatever.
Right.
So it's pretty cool. But anyways, what did you think of this episode, Captain Vactor?
I very much enjoyed Let Sleeping Borg Lie. I'm much like you. I'm a big Borg fan, and it's always interesting to see the lasting impact of the Borg, because we saw him in Picard in this last season. We're continuing to see the Borg 10, 20 years later after the inception and creation of the Borg, and it's like, this is something that is going to live on in sci-fi history. It's just kind of an indelible piece of sci-fi, and it's just also kind of a testament to the original creators of, hey, this creation has lasted, that idea has lasted this long. So I also was pleasantly surprised to see him. I didn't look anything up before this episode, so when I saw that the name was in the title, I said, oh yeah, this is going to be a great episode. And it definitely was, and specifically for the Star Trek Prodigy audience, this is like a good introduction to the Borg. This would be your first time as a kid watching this and saying, oh, what are these? What is the Borg? Showing their strengths, their weaknesses, everything. So I thought it was a great episode.
I agree. It was a really good episode. I feel like there's one thing I struggle with this Prodigy show, and that's that every episode feels like it's a life or death thing. Like in any episode so far, they could easily die, all of them at the same time.
Right.
Like they're going to either get exploded together or they're going to get assimilated together, or the planet's going to swallow them whole together. Like whatever it is, it's always together, which I guess is maybe the point. But the one thing I think that really works for this show is it has a lot of heart that you don't really see coming.
Yes.
And especially towards the end of this episode when Zero is resisting the Borg influence and being assimilated into the collective. And she's focused on the voices of her friends that she's now considering to be her family. Or should I say she? Zero.
I think
Zero is a they, I think, right?
Oh, I don't even know.
So here's and I don't want to get into like gender and misgendering or anything like that and like putting labels, but because obviously this is a non-corporeal thing, but I'm pretty sure the voice actor that voices Zero is a guy, but the way that Zero sounds very feminine.
Yes.
So I don't, I'm a little confused on that, but maybe that's not the point that we should be focused on. But just in case I misgender Zero for our listeners, just know I don't know. I really don't know what the correct way is, and I don't have Zero here to ask him, her, they. So, but with that in mind, Zero is pushing back against the Borg and succeeds because of this. And there's kind of like a moment of warm touchies, warm feelies. What do they call those in school when you're a little kid?
I always heard it as fuzzies.
Oh, yeah, fuzzies. That's what it is. Warm fuzzies. This episode definitely has the warm fuzzies, which you would not expect from a Borg episode, but it definitely happens. And then I was like reminded, okay, yeah, this is a kid's show. There's going to be some warm fuzzies. So, but I mean, I liked it. What are some like memorable moments for you?
The seeing the Borg wake up, seeing the immensity from the characters' eyes, and the way that their adaptation was shown, that was something that I already knew, but thinking about it for the first time as a child, watching this and saying, "Oh man, how would you defeat the Borg? Like, what would be the way to finish them off?" So, kind of the scariness of the Borg, and then what you had just mentioned, the moment of realization for Zero at the end of the episode of, I've already got my collective. That kind of like, as a father, as a family man, that kind of hit me. And I said, oh man, that's a great touch to add by the writers there.
Oh, yeah, totally. Another thing I loved was the way they portrayed visually her or them being assimilated. So, like, you don't normally see it in that sort of metaphorical space of she as her non-corporeal self is interacting with like these Borg tendrils. Like, it's like existing within the machine mind, which was really an interesting thing to visually show. So I liked that because that's not a perspective that we've had yet.
Right.
We know what it sounds like when a Borg voice is in your head, when you've got the queen, the collective talking to you, the hive mind, but we don't know what that looks like. And so that was really cool to see.
Yeah. I actually looked it up while we were talking, Shoff. The official entry on StarTrek.com, Zero, who is voiced by Angus Emery, who is a male, is a genderless Medusan. So that species does not have a gender, and they refer to them as they.
Okay. All right. There we go. Thank you for checking that. So there we go. I apologize for labeling Zero as a female.
Well, I did the same thing. Until you brought that up, I just thought, oh yeah, everybody knows this is a female and the actor is a female, but I learned something here today, and I think perhaps our listeners did as well, Shaw.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, the episode's really good. Here's what I'm finding, Vactor, and maybe you can share the same. I feel like this show, there's just not as much to talk about
week to week.
Week to week for Prodigy.
Yeah,
and that to me, that's like a challenge for the podcast.
Yes.
I mean, it's great to watch it and be a completionist for Star Trek, but to me, this doesn't feel like a show that really lends itself well to picking it apart, understanding character motivations. It also, because it's animated and because, like, I realize, I think this is technically canon. Like, what's happening on the show still counts as canon. I mean, it's got Vice Admiral Janeway and everything. So, like, it can exist, but it doesn't feel like it is technically part of everything else.
Right. And that's something that, as a Star Wars fan, I come across that in things where it's like, all right, I'm reading a comic book. Does this matter? Does this count? Even as a comic book fan, reading different things and different mediums. Okay, I'm watching this Marvel show. Does that count for the overall? I'm watching this Marvel movie. Okay, does that plot line tie into anything? And so I found this in various mediums. I think specifically with this show, Star Trek Prodigy, it's probably best to look at the entire season. And I think that's why they do the ready rooms where they kind of recap the entire seasons, or they do to the beginning. The very first episode, they're like, hey guys, the premiere's here. The new episode is out. Let's talk to the cast. And then they come back at the end of the season. And, oh man, did you guys see that season? Like, this is what happened.
Yeah. I
think that might be the best way to go for this one specifically, because there is a lot that happens over the course of the season. Each episode is kind of episodic, but it's also serialized in that there is an overarching storyline with her dad.
Right.
So I think there is that character development and growth and things like that, but it's on a more macro level than us looking at it on a micro level of each week to week. But I get the same as you, Shoff, the same feeling.
So I was thinking as I was watching this morning, after coming off the heels of Strange New Worlds, we also watched season 3 of Lower Decks. and we also have experienced Picard season 2, all within the realm of our podcast.
Yeah.
We got to experience what a non-serialized show that has just episodic stories in Strange New Worlds was doing, which was more in line with what the original series did and things like that. As opposed to Prodigy, even though Prodigy had a lot of one-off type episodes that did have a serialized arc, overarching like season story, especially from like the character development. So, but I feel like Lower Decks was more like Strange New Worlds in that it focused on having those individual episodes that were their own thing, while still serving for character development, which is where I think Strange New Worlds has the serialized element, is in the character development of the episodes.
Right.
Whereas Prodigy is, if you're missing an episode, you're missing a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Like, and I don't know, now having experienced both and going back and forth on that, I feel like I prefer the storytelling of Strange New Worlds or Lower Decks, where it's a little bit less focused on it being a serialized story throughout the season and more about like individual things happening that serve an overarching character development. I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think when I look at this show, I'm placing myself into the viewers or the intended viewership's shoes, basically, and saying, okay, this is probably what I would want as a 7-8-year-old, maybe even 9-10-year-old, of, okay, it's not too much. When I was growing up, I didn't necessarily look at the season-long arcs of the character development, things like that. It was just, oh, is this a fun show? Am I having a good time with the characters going on these adventures? And I think it's succeeding in that realm. Looking at it as an adult, yeah, it's not necessarily as fulfilling as Strange New Worlds was in season 1. And so it's interesting to look at both. But I feel like we would probably be best to look at, as season 2 of Prodigy comes out, maybe as a whole, the season, and say, hey, this is what happened during that season, instead of doing it week to week.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, as far as this episode goes, I don't have much more to add to our discussion other than to say it was a decent episode.
Yeah, I liked it.
It was nice to have the entire crew together for it and experiencing things together versus being separated, some on the ship, some on, whatever. Like, they were all in the midst of it. So
yeah. And Jason Mantzoukas continues to make me laugh every time he says a word.
He does. I don't know how much I love the third person talk, but ultimately, because it to me, it kind of makes him sound dumber.
Oh, right.
And he's already like the comic relief,
right.
So he's not like the sharpest tool in the shed or whatever. But he's fun. I do like him, and every time I watch, I'm kind of like, you know what? He kind of looks like Jason Mantzoukas at the same time. So yeah. So apparently Mantzoukas is a Tellarite, but through and through. That's awesome. Well, with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and switch gears. And now that we're finished with our episode discussion, we'll be going and doing our next favorite thing that we like to do on the podcast, which is a weekly segment that we like to call Boldly Dadding. Co-Captain's Log Supplemental. If you haven't heard about Anchor from Spotify, it's the easiest way to make an interplanetary podcast with everything you need all in one sector. Let us explain.
Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone, computer, or tricorder.
When hosting on Anchor, you can transmit your podcast on all hailing frequencies to each of the 4 quadrants on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and much more.
It's everything you need to synthesize a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. No gold-pressed latinum needed.
Download the Anchor app or boldly go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, so with Boldly Dadding, we share a story or a lesson that we've learned throughout the past week as being dads to young kids. So I'm going to let Vactor kick things off with a story or a lesson or whatever you'd like to share about the past week as a dad.
This last week was Halloween weekend, Shoff.
Oh, that's right.
And I was interested in telling you my Halloween experience as well as listening to your Halloween experience. As a dad of an 18-month-old, Halloween is not a holiday that I think is going to be the most utilized, let's say, like Christmas time or Thanksgiving time. We're going to have the toddler with us. We're going to have my son. But with Halloween, he's at that age where he's not going to get a lot out of trick-or-treating. And even him wearing a costume, which is fun. It's fun to have a family. We had a family theme this year of Spider-Man, or Into the Spider-Verse specifically. So I was Peter B. Parker. My wife was Spider-Gwen, Gwen Stacy. My son was Miles Morales. And it's a fun thing to dress up with your entire family. I always enjoy that. I did last year. We had a Star Wars theme. I was the Mandalorian. My wife was Princess Leia, and my son was an Ewok. Now, last year, he had even less kind of consciousness where he did not know what was going on. So he wore the Ewok costume, posed for a couple pictures, got hot, and then that was it. This year, he's a little more cognizant of what's going on. He flat out refused to wear the Miles Morales mask. Anything on his head or face, my son almost immediately takes off. We try to put sunglasses on him to protect his eyes when we're out in the sun. He immediately takes those off, try to put a hat on.
Man, I know that. I know that all too well.
Immediately takes it off. And he did wear the costume, which was fun, but he just has very low attention span and very low patience. So Halloween consisted of, we went to a gathering, and it was kind of in a field, and there was a popcorn machine, there was a grill, people were grilling food, and then we actually ended up leaving before the candy was passed out, just because he was kind of done at that point. We ate first, and then by the time that was done, he was ready to go. He was just running around. He didn't have any patience or focus. So that was and he didn't pose for any pictures. Like, he refused. He was kind of being fussy and temperamental. So we didn't get a whole lot of pictures of us together like I would have liked.
Yeah.
And then so by the time we got home, we were like, yeah, we're not going to do the regular trick-or-treating thing where he walks around going door to door. Maybe next year or maybe the year after. But at this point, at 18 months, it just, we came inside, turned our lights off, went to sleep while everyone else was trick-or-treating. So that's something that I didn't think about before I was a dad. You just think about kids having fun on Halloween, getting candy and things like that. But I never considered the toddler age before this becoming a dad. So it was just kind of an interesting experience this year, and I wanted to hear what Shoff's experience was.
Oh, well, I'm glad you at least got a nice, like, family-wide costume, like something that you guys could all do together. Like, that's fun. That's super fun. Yeah. I look forward to that with our kids. We haven't really done much in the way of Halloween in years past. Technically, this is Emily's third Halloween. The first one, she went as Supergirl, and I was Superman, but sort of like in mid change from Clark Kent. And then Sarah went as Supergirl as well, so it was a couple of Supergirls. And then last year, neither myself nor Sarah dressed up, but we still had Emily, and she was Madame Cleo. She was like a fortune teller, and I made like this whole thing for her to stand behind and sort of like give people candy from the door, and she would also give them fortune cookies and stuff too that I had gotten like in bulk from Panda Express.
That was
which
great.
Was fun.
I saw that.
But I made that whole like stand out of like PVC pipe and stuff. It was fun. But this past year, just with moving into the house and still getting kind of situated, there wasn't enough time to get like decorations out on like the door and everything, and we certainly didn't have time to get her a costume together. She has like a Moana dress that my mom and dad had gotten her, but it's on the border of not fitting very well anymore. Like it's a little tight around the arms, so she doesn't like to wear it. And she doesn't eat candy until Halloween. Just this couple days ago, she got a chance to try a candy bar for the first time.
Hey.
One of those little like fun size candy bars.
Yeah.
She got to try Twix for the first time.
Nice.
And her new favorite thing to say, whether it's her trying food that she really likes, or reading a book that she really likes, or playing with a certain Play-Doh color that she really likes, she says, "Really love that one." I'm like, "So you like playing with it?" She's like, "Yeah, really love that one." So cute. So cute to hear her articulate what she loves.
Nice.
So that was fun. But she got to try Twix, and she really liked Twix. And we didn't have a single trick-or-treater. So it was kind of a bust. I have all this candy, which now I have to eat. Oh my God, it's awful. Ugh. I mean, I'll eat it. I'll do it because that's what heroes do. But yeah,
Show off jumping on the grenade as he always does.
Exactly. But as far as like my contribution to Boldly Dadding, I wanted to share because this past week, and something I've been talking about for the past few times that we've had Boldly Dadding, is that I'm focusing on my own health and wellness.
Yeah,
a lot more than I was. As we say, proverbially, putting the mask over your face before you put it on the person sitting next to you.
Yeah.
So I had set up a gym membership probably about a month ago, but it wasn't until this week that I finally was able to get my butt there and actually get some workouts in. So I'm on like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. And so I've gone twice so far this week. And let me tell you, my body is sore AF. I am sore and tired. So definitely it's good. It's good to feel that, that you're doing something for your body that way. But one of the reasons why I was motivated this week was I saw a post from my very favorite wrestler of all time, from WCW to WWF, Diamond Dallas Page.
DDP, yeah.
Love DDP. Anyways, if you haven't felt the bang from DDP, then you're not living. Okay, you're not living. You're gonna feel the diamond cutter.
Yeah.
But anyways, DDP had a lot to say, and he has a lot to say because he's got his own yoga company that he does as well, and so he's always putting out inspirational quotes, whether it's his own that he makes up or stuff that he's sharing. And there was one that really stuck out to me, and I wanted to share it on the podcast.
Yeah.
And prepare to have your mind blown. I'm going to say it twice because it's that like powerful a statement. So it's, if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll have to make time for your illness. All right, one more time. Here we go. If you don't make time right now for your wellness, you'll have to make time in the future for your illness.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that really stuck with me. So that's what I'm doing, making time for my wellness now so that I am a healthier version of myself.
That is great.
Yeah, in the future. So I can live a long life and be around for my kids and my kids' kids and things like that. So,
that actually, Chuff, ties into a little revelation that I've had within the last couple of weeks, I think. And we've seen it. You and I both have seen it in other people, other associates that we both know, acquaintances, as it were, where they do not, let's say, they are completely about living in the moment, nothing about planning for the future. And as I've been thinking about those acquaintances and individuals, I think everything in my life can be categorized as a seed that was planted sometimes months ago, sometimes years ago. But things that are happening now are because I planned for them in the past. Things that are going to happen for me in the future, I'm trying to set up as best I can. And with you, I think that's the same thing. Taking care of yourself now, you're planting a seed that will definitely bear fruit in the future as far as health goes, because it's not something you can, oh, I had a heart attack, I need to take care of myself right now. You can prevent the heart attack. It's that age-old saying of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The preventative measures are way more powerful than the cure of, oh, it's already happened to me, so I'm going to think about it now. I think you're right now on the right path. It's great that you're thinking about your health because you want to be strong to watch your children grow. You want to be there as a dad. And I thought about that as far as when I was planning to have my son. I don't want to be 70 years old and he's, 10. I don't want to be this old dad who can't play with his son, can't lift him up, can't pick him up. So I think planning for the future is an essential thing that we should all take, not take for granted in all aspects of our life. It doesn't matter whether it's financial, whether it's health, anything in our lives, I think can be boiled down to that. Preparation is the key. What is it? Planning to fail is, or failing to prepare is preparing to fail. You have to think about things that are going to happen in the future. You can't do everything spur of the moment.
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So taking that time now, I think I saw the average lifespan of a man nowadays is 75. It's not, people aren't living to 100. Yes,
right.
You can. Absolutely you
right.
can. But the average man in like 2022 is living to 75, which means that if you cut that in half, 37 and change is, that's the halfway point. That's your midlife crisis, right? So like both of us are older than that.
Right.
I'll be 40 in 2023. And, Vector, you celebrated 40 this year,
yes,
is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So like, we're already past the halfway point, if you want to look at it that way, which is kind of depressing to think about. But I think that's just enough to charge you forward and say, hey, you got to do it now.
Yeah.
You gotta
because
do it now. So
even if you're not, let's say, extending your life, you'd want to live to 100, but you don't want those last remaining 25 years of your life to be on a respirator. No. The quality of life is so bad. Oh, I should have passed away years ago. You want to be healthy and able at the end of your life. So let's say, even if you don't extend it, at least when you're getting to 75, you're having a higher quality of life. So I 100% agree, Shoff. I'd take health very seriously.
Yeah, and you eat well, too.
Yes.
I know this.
Oh,
and we do enjoy our occasional Mexican pizza, but I've definitely been eating a lot better. All right. Well, anyways, that's our Boldly Dadding for this past week. And it's something we really love. We really love the Boldly Dadding segment. It's something that we added just to sort of, lean into what it's like in fatherhood for us. And obviously we have young kids, but we're finding more and more just how relevant these lessons are, not only for dads and for moms or parents in general, but just to be a man in 2022. Like there's a lot to benefit from, a lot to learn. So we would even encourage, if anybody who's listening has something they'd like to share, maybe a tip or a lesson, one of the best ways to do that is to go to the link at the bottom of our show notes for Anchor, and you can leave us a voice memo, and you just record your own little voicemail for us, and we'll play it on the podcast. And if it's Boldly Dadding related, we'll play it during Boldly Dadding, and you can basically be right there along with us, sharing your tips for parenting. So we would love that.
Yeah.
But thank you again so much for listening. If you're looking to find us on various social media platforms, we are on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Maybe not Twitter for so much longer if Elon Musk has his way, but definitely on these handles so far. You can search for us at TREKNOPOD, TREKNOPOD. We're also available. Maybe you're listening to us on YouTube. And we were doing video. We put a stop to that only because my computer is a little out of date, and I'm in the process of buying a new one, which will then make video a whole lot easier to manage. So we'll be back with video shortly. But until then, if you're listening on YouTube, thank you so much. Please subscribe on YouTube or TikTok. We're doing a lot of short form content to get our name out there and have a lot of fun while we're doing it. So that would be great. Now, if you enjoyed what you heard today, we would love for you to subscribe to our show. And if you love the show, no obligation, of course, but we would invite you to give us a rating, hopefully 5 stars, and a review. There are some platforms that let you do that. Apple Podcasts will let you do both. Spotify will let you rate the podcast. And from time to time, Spotify also, we add questions or polls to the episode. And as well, we mentioned the voicemail option through Anchor. So lots of ways to get in touch with us. And we would love to hear from you. So we hope you'll share our podcast with your Trekkie friends and family. Next week, we're going to continue our ongoing recap and review of Star Trek Prodigy Season 1. And with that, Captain Vactor, I believe our mission of the week is complete. Schaff and Vactor here, 2 to beam up.
Live long and prosper!
Resistance is futile!